When I'm working on dailies, this is really the primary correction. So you're doing that initial correction where you are basically just doing corrections for white balance and contrast and saturation. You are not getting in the weeds with localized corrections or anything like that because you're working with very long clips. It would not be ideal to work on corrections on a granular level. In fact, it would be very inefficient. So this is what most people do, just the primary correction. Now what that looks like is your lift corrections, your gamma corrections, and your gain corrections. Lift means shadows, gamma means midtones, and gain means highlights. Now how that looks is when I adjust gain, it adjusts my highlights. And when I adjust gamma, it adjusts my mids. And when I adjust lift, it adjusts my shadows. Now, these are all separate from each other, which is very nice to have. Offset is similar to all of them, except it adjusts everything at once. These dials here are for luminance, and these wheels here are for color. So if I move up the gain so you can see, and I adjust the color towards the orange side, you can see it gets warm or cold. Or if I move it blue, it gets blue, etc. That's true for all of these. This is how we make our corrections. You want to use this color wheel to make those corrections. And basically the way that works is if I have an image that is very orange like this, and then I want to make it neutral again, I move that dot in the opposite direction. So we know that it's warm, it's on the orange side. So we move it in the opposite direction and it becomes neutral-ish. And that is part of your primary correction. That's the white balance correction. You use the color theory, which states that if you want a neutral color, you add more of the opposite color on the color wheel. That's how we do our white balance, is using those tools for lift, gamma, and gain. Usually you'll do a white balance and a black balance, and you will use your scopes to help you. I'm just going to do my Rgb Parade here. Your Rgb Parade is basically telling you what are your luminance values broken out into red, green, and blue. By luminance, we mean how light is it, how dark is it. The higher it is on the scope, the lighter it is. The darker it is, the closer to the bottom it is. And this is visually represented from left to right, corresponding to what's on your screen. So you can tell that our talent is sitting here on the stump right here on the left third of the screen, because that's where the image starts to drop in luminance. Her guitar is much darker than almost anything in the frame except for maybe this rock, which is represented here. And her boots as well. You can see her boots here. This is also true of the Waveform Monitor. I'm going to turn off the colorize. I always turn off the colorize option because it's essentially doing the same thing as the Rgb parades. Your Waveform Monitor and your parade are very similar in that they both display the luminance values in the same way. The higher you go, the brighter it is. The lower you go, the darker it is. And it corresponds to the image from left to right in the same way it is here. You can see the rock down here. You can see her boots here. You can see her guitar right around here. You can see the sky all the way along here. And I'm going to use my panel here with my hand, so you won't see it on the screen, but when I brighten the image, you can see that they're going up here. And when I bring down the lift, you can see it going down. Now, when these scopes fall off below 0, you start losing detail. That's when black is black without any detail. There's no shades of dark gray. And when you do the same with the highlights, same deal. You start blowing out, losing detail. You want to be pretty sparing with how you do that. Sometimes it's necessary, sometimes it's preferred. I know a lot of people like to have at least one perfectly white thing in the image, one perfectly black thing in the image. It's a great way to show full contrast. That's something that I personally like to do. So that's your waveform, and that's your Rgb Parade. The Parade is a really useful tool for that initial white balance. You can use it to get a perfectly balanced white image. I have to apologize because I'm always using my wave panel. I should be doing this on the screen so you can see. So sort of getting this image in a pretty good contrast place. You want to look at the whitest parts of this image. So you've got your red just dipping up right around here, green going a little below, and blue a little below that. So I'm going to use the gain to push the blue a little bit more and kind of get the highest points of this scope aligned. And that's going to get you your white balance. And you want to do the same thing for the black balance as well. You move the lift just over a little bit towards the blue, and it's going to push down the red and green a little bit and just get them aligned. Now this is a balanced image. It looks kind of blah, so we'll maybe add some saturation, but this is our white balanced image. This is a great place to start for our initial primary correction. That being said, when I do these initial corrections, I really typically start with a LUT. I'm not a big fan of LUTs because for most of what we do, a one-size-fits-all solution is not the solution. However, it's a pretty good opportunity to see what the DP was seeing. Typically, the DP is going to be looking at a monitor that is running a LUT from the manufacturer of that camera. That's not always the case, so you might want to get whatever LUT they were using on set, but it's a good way to kind of say, you know, I know they were shooting log, they probably weren't watching it in log, so let's watch it the way they were watching it. I know I shot this on the Sony FS7, so I'm gonna pull up my preferred LUT within that manufacturer LUT family. That's pretty good. It's a little contrasty, just looking it on its head, but the more I look at it, the more I like it. It feels really poppy. And this is important, I'm not gonna really get into it, but for any LUTs, you're going to wanna do your luminance corrections before it. You really don't wanna do it after because you start losing detail, but you know, it's not something I'm gonna get into right at this moment. I'm going to lift up the gamma a little bit, just get more detail down here and where it's starting to be a little too shadowed. I'm going to drop the lift a little bit, and I'm looking at my parade here, and I can pull it up in the waveform. I'm going to drop it so that I just touch 0, and I'm going to bring up the gain so that I just touch the 1023 number up there. Now that might feel a little poppy. I'm looking on my reference monitor and it's really pushing it based on this image. So I'm just going to bring it back a little bit. Just give it a little more room to breathe, just where we had it. And call it a day there. I think this is a really good starting image. Then I'm going to go through for my dailies and just try to copy and paste as best I can and adjust from there. And just a quick tip, the middle mouse button on your mouse is the way you copy and paste. So you select here and you middle click on the one you want. This is looking maybe a touch magenta, so I'm just going to go over here and push it a little. I can't do it with these tiny wheels. I'm going to do it with the trackball here on my tangent wave. Just going to push it just a touch green. And you can kind of scroll through and see if everything works throughout. I'm just going to bring this down. All right. And that's really what you want to do when you're doing your dailies. You just go through one clip at a time and try to be as fast as you can.